It's interesting, Mick, because I feel like the younger generation already spends a big portion of their time in virtual spaces, maybe older millennials and up, who are still kind of trying to wrap their heads around this virtual space and in the metaverse in general. It's kind of coming back in some ways, but in a much more measured form, and where you start to make more sense of it, and it starts to have a better impact rather than just the hype cycle that surrounded it.
How's it?
Hello. Hey, Mick.
Good to see you. So this is the godmother of the future, public best-selling author, top LinkedIn voice, and really, you just connected with everything, what's happening, what's next.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting. I'm a tech futurist. I'm also a tech executive, but I think just the last couple of years, with the convergence of all these technologies kind of coming together, things have just accelerated at a rapid pace, like you were mentioning in your intro. It's an exciting time to definitely peer into the future and think about what comes next.
Yeah, it's almost like this pace is accelerating so fast. As something comes out, you don't even have time to check it and engage with it before the next technology that's even better comes out.
Yeah, 100%. Part of the work I do is always looking at the signals and the trends and trying to figure out, okay, where does this go next, or what are the things that need to tie together for it to make sense, right? So kind of like looking around corners, or thinking about how some of these technologies are interconnected, how they could change things. Yeah, I think the last, I would say the last year and a half, 2 years have been just an explosion, an exponential moment for technology in general. Obviously AI, this wouldn't be a tech conversation if we didn't mention AI, right? But I feel like with AI, it's just it's just this hyperdrive and this hyper acceleration that is allowing a lot of other exponential technologies to finally grow and finally become what they can be. So yeah, just a remarkable time to be alive.
Absolutely. And I mean, for some of the folks that don't know you so well, can you just share like how your background led you to become a pioneer in the space, in spatial computing, AI? I know we met in Costa Rica. You gave me that headset in 2019 with the Magic Leap.
Yeah, so I've been working in technology for more than a decade, deep in deep tech. Worked at HTC Vive, which is a virtual reality hardware company whose engineering team just got acquired by Google. I worked also, and when I worked there, which is an interesting point of information, when I worked at HTC Vive, I was one of their virtual reality evangelists during their partnership with Steven Spielberg's adaptation of Ready Player One, right? So I've been kind of very involved in that world, then went over to work at Magic Leap, which is the device you're mentioning. It's one of the initial spatial computers. So before you had the Apple Vision Pro, there was Magic Leap that allowed you to see virtual content in front of you. I worked with them as an enterprise strategist, working on how do you start to use this for the enterprise? What is spatial computing in general? And how can you start using it in the enterprise? Then went over to Amazon Web Services and worked on the Amazon Cloud side on services like AWS SimSpace Weaver for large-scale gaming simulations and large-scale simulations. I know we're going to talk about virtual twins. Also on a little bit on AWS Bedrock, which is one of their AI services. Then launched off on my own. At that point, the metaverse was just picking up. The concept and the idea of the metaverse was just picking up. I was really early to it, just like Matthew Ball, and kind of launched my own company. My company got acquired in 10 months. So as an entrepreneur, a huge accomplishment. So got acquired in 10 months, went over to work at a company called Journey. I left earlier last year. And then, I'm working on a whole bunch of different projects now, even doing external consulting with BCG. It's just been amazing. I've written 5 books. I mean, and I'm a mom of 3 kids. So, it's been a lot.
It's unbelievable. And I mean, your latest book, it's called Spatial Computing. Do you want to share some of the trends or the highlights from the book?
Yeah, so it's called Spatial Computing, an AI-driven business revolution. One thing that I wanted people to take away from the book, and I said this on stage at Singularity U, South Africa, was that it's not about one single technology or one single device, right? Because a lot of people think spatial computing and they immediately think Apple Vision Pro, because that might have been the first time they might have encountered the term. But spatial computing is the next evolution in computing. So if you want to define it, It is an evolving 3D-centric form of computing that at its core uses computer vision, AI, extended reality, and other technologies to blend virtual experiences in someone's experience of the physical world. It is a way that computing is going to change human-to-human communications again, just like mobile computing did, and also how human-computer interaction is about to change. So with spatial computing, you get the next evolution of computing. You get the evolution and the expansion of computing into the physical world. That's where it starts to get really interesting with everything happening in artificial intelligence. And I know we're probably going to talk about OpenAI as well, but I'm going to try to make sense of why some of these companies are doing some of the things that they're doing.
I mean, it's a really exciting space. I think that you were telling me this year is the year of the metaverse. A lot of the companies are going to be launching, and coming into this new field, bringing us closer to this, into these digital realms.
Yeah. So what I think is happening is we went through the hype cycle of the metaverse, where the term metaverse, even one of the world's biggest companies changed their name, right? From Facebook to Meta. So there was this couple of years of this hype cycle of trying to wrap your heads around what it is. I think the term has evolved, right? The term has really kind of started to become something a little bit different that doesn't have as much baggage. So I do see this year as a make or break year, let's say, for metaverse in general, as in the sense, and Mark Zuckerberg said this recently too to his staff. But yeah, it is a moment where we're going to start to see more of that virtualizing of our lives and our engagements and things that we do. It's interesting, Mick, because I feel like the younger generation already spends a big portion of their time in virtual spaces. It's, I think, more of the people that are in the working class, the people that, are kind of a little bit, maybe older millennials and up, who are still kind of trying to wrap their heads around this virtual space. But it's definitely a really important year to watch what things are happening in virtual worlds and virtual experiences and in the metaverse in general. So definitely see that. I mean, you and I were having this conversation. It's like, it's kind of coming back in some ways, but in a much more measured form, and where you start to make more sense of it. And it starts to have a better impact rather than just the hype cycle that surrounded it.
Yeah, exactly. We were in that trough of disillusionment, and now it's about to go up.
Yeah.
Into hit the knee of the curve and go exponential. And this is what's pretty interesting, is that we do have a live audience here, and they are writing in the chat. So exciting! Great to be here. Denzel, Chetty, this is that was an amazing trajectory. Just your career. I think your acceleration of your career is like exponential. And then we've got somebody else said it's fun to be in a virtual space like this, way more engaging. 100%. Thank you so much for that comment. And you can, if you've got any questions for Cathy, anybody, you can write in the chat, and we will be opening it up to audio questions a bit later. Cathy, let's move the conversation a little bit to artificial intelligence. It's on everyone's minds, and we all are dabbling in these different applications. Just recently, we saw this release of DeepSeek and Quen, from China, that just came out, that is open source, and OpenAI came back with, is releasing new products. How do you view this ongoing AI race between USA and China, and where's the rest of the world in this space?
It's a really interesting thing to watch, right? Especially, I'm based in the United States, in Washington, D.C., of all places, right? So it's been interesting to kind of watch this kind of race, let's say this AI race. The interesting thing to me, Mick, when it comes to DeepSeek, is that no one should have been surprised by China having a model that would do pretty much very similar to what OpenAI was doing with their model, and train on a lot less. I mean, if anyone was watching news or reading news at the end of last year, at an event called FII Priority in Riyadh, the FII event in Riyadh, Pete Diamandis, her friend, actually did a talk on stage, a panel on stage with Kai-Fu Lee. He was one of the panelists, and Kai-Fu, who has been very involved in AI in China for a very long time, talked about how the model that he was working on, which is a different one, had been trained for a fraction of the cost, right? So it's interesting that people, eventually were like, what is going on? How are they training this, when it's something we already knew, had already been said, and the media had already in some ways covered it? Here's the interesting thing. I think that as we head into the future of AI, we need to start to think about where the innovation comes from and what happens to the large language models, right? Jan LeCun, who is the chief AI person at Meta in Davos, actually said that in 5 years' time, no one's going to be using LLMs, or they're not going to be thinking about LLMs in the same way, or there's going to be new models and new architectures. So that, that is something that I had been thinking about for a while. And I said, this is what's about to happen. What you're about to see is that there's going to be a new place where AI, this AI dominance or this AI race is going to play out. And it won't be as much in the large language models and so much in the software. It's going to play out in the hardware. Okay. That's where people are like, what do you mean? In order to train the future of the new models, those new architectures, those new models that Jan LeCun is talking about, you are going to need more and more data, right? Pretty soon, the large language models are going to run out of data. Information from the web, from the internet that they can consume. Pretty much, it's all going to be what they've consumed and then synthetic data that they create. Where are they going to get new data? Where are you going to be able to get the data to enable the agentic AI? We're going to talk about agents, of course. But where are you going to get the data to enable agentic AI, the data to enable humanoid robots to navigate the world, and physical AI, right? That's going to come from hardware. So whoever owns the hardware is going to be able to gather, I don't want to use the word collect, but gather and acquire that data in real time of the physical world that's going to be used to train the large action models, the large world models, the large vision models. They're going to enable that future state where we're truly kind of navigating the world with, with these humanoid robots, with holograms, with virtual beings. So the moat around software, as DeepSeek has shown us, is getting smaller by the day. Where's the bigger moat? It's going to be in the hardware, and it's going to be in the things that are created for that specific hardware and the data it's going to start to kind of give, these companies. That's where, if you look at things that are happening, for example, OpenAI, just this week here in the United States, not only changed their brand and they're doing an ad in the Super Bowl of all places, but they also filed trademarks for virtual reality headsets, augmented reality AR glasses, smart jewelry, smart wearables, all these sorts of things, at the same time as Meta making also an ad for the Super Bowl for their Ray-Ban AI glasses. So there's about to be this really big moment in technology where hardware is going to be where you're going to battle out the next AI dominance, because that is where the data is going to come from. And there also is a place for China. China has also been investing heavily in spatial computing. Like, they actually invited my co-author for the book and myself to China last year for a big conference. I didn't make it because I was over in South Africa with you, but my co-author made it to China to talk about spatial computing. There is immense interest as well in spatial computing over there and in hardware. So yeah, so this is playing out in the headlines when you talk about DeepSeek and all these other things in the large language models. I think the bigger piece of the pie and the bigger competition will happen on the hardware, because that's going to provide the data for physical AI to actually happen. So that's my perspective in a nutshell. And yeah, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also, just think about that, like driverless autonomous car companies like Tesla, Waymo, they've also got this incredible data that they've been collecting. They would also probably be in this race, right?
Elon, just during his earnings call, literally said Tesla is a robotics company, a humanoid robotics company. There's a reason.
Oh, really?
There's a reason NVIDIA had robots in their keynote. Like, there's a reason Apple's going into home robots for the home. Everyone's going to go into that space because that enables physical AI. That enables physical, like all these large language models and all these things that we're working on. In order for them to be truly useful to us in the physical world, are going to be able to have to see, understand, implement, and execute in the physical world. And they're only going to be able to do that through the hardware. So whoever owns the hardware has access to the data and can control the experience that people have with that. So yeah, very, very interesting moment in technology.
It's really, really exciting. And the other thing to think about is the applications that you can create and the communities that you can, engender and help by helping people is going to be the moats, because as you said, the computation and the LLMs are all becoming commodities. Yeah. So it's going to need to be that other layer, that new layer that comes on top of it.
I believe that it's going to enable us to see like the new hardware. So this combination of AI and spatial computing and new devices, new hardware, all these sorts of things is going to enable us to see a virtual layer on top of the physical world. So imagine if you were at your house and you had glasses and you could teleport into this same virtual stage and see it virtually, but in front of you, in your coffee table, right? Or in front of your desk. That's going to be how this is going to be enabled. We're going to be able to see that virtual layer in front of us in kind of new ways. So yeah.
No, it's really exciting, and it's like progressing so fast. It started off as large language models, then it moved to creating these GPTs or these bots, and now we're moving into this agentic era. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your thoughts of, what is agentic AI and how's it set to redefine our digital interactions in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I feel like everyone this is my LinkedIn is all about AI right now. Everyone's talking about AI, and a big part of that is agentic AI. So there's AI agents and agentic AI. It's the evolution of these large language models where they're actually going to start to do a lot more things for you. And when you talk about agentic AI, I think the important part for people to understand is that it's not just a chatbot. We're not just talking about just a chatbot that you interact with. No, this is eventually agents that do things for you on your behalf. So imagine, and who gave a really good explanation of this in a very interesting perspective at Singularity U South Africa. Was David Roberts. He talked about your agent talking to someone else's agent, all these sorts of things. So eventually these agents are going to do things for you. You already have, for example, OpenAI's research tool that they launched this week that actually will go on the web and do research for you and do a whole analysis for you. Something that would take a human hours upon hours to do. Now I can delegate that to my agent to do that. Right. So I don't think that you're going to have like one single agent. You're going to have multiple agents, or it might be like a master agent that manages all your other agents that are going to do all sorts of things for you. Right. And then those agents are going to communicate with, Shane, your brother's agents. Right. It's going to be kind of this kind of like almost like a whole new workforce that you're going to have on your behalf that is going to be able to augment everything you do. So, yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around it, but it's truly kind of where it's heading in enabling us to have that agentic AI layer. Here's where it gets interesting to me is in order for the agents to actually be able to do things for you in the physical world, et cetera, right? To help you with your farming or to help you plan your trip or all these sorts of things, they're eventually going to need to be able to see the world, right? To have that vision into the world. And eventually they're going to be able to kind of like be embodied agents in some ways in the physical world. That's where the hardware starts to come in, right? So I was at CES in Las Vegas, and Jensen Huang gave a really interesting keynote. And he talked about kind of where we are. He talked about generative AI. We're moving into agentic AI. And then the next phase after agentic AI is physical AI, right? So if you follow that curve and you understand where things are going, you start to see what is the path forward? How does it all come together?
I love it. Like, I've cloned myself, just using one of these AI clones, and that is my AI agent because, it's produced over 250 videos, in a couple of months without having me to actually go into the studio, record, do all the stuff in studio. And I've got a friend who's got an Instagram agent, and his agent, while he was sleeping, served over 600 of his customers for him. So he woke up and he, helped more people than he could physically ever do in that time, especially while sleeping. So it's really, really going to be an exciting time for us. And the other thing I heard that I wanted to mention was Imad Mustak was saying recently that now that these agents can actually see your screen, so anything behind the screen can be a task that can be done by these agents. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot more coming together of people, either through in metaverse experiences or in physical, so that people are actually going to have to, come together to work together more than just being behind the screen together.
100%. I definitely see that. It's a really interesting moment because it's gonna be able to augment you, right? It's gonna be able to do those sorts of things. There was an article last year that was really funny here in the United States, and it was a tech reporter writing and said, "I want AI to actually be able to sign up my kids for summer camp." Right here in the United States, sometimes when you want to send your kids to summer camp, you have to like get on a list. You have to do this whole thing, and then like when the registration opens, all the moms are trying to get in the computer to register their kids. And she was talking about how she would want AI to go and do that registration and get the spot for her kid in summer camp, which is a coveted thing. right? And I'm like, that's exactly what the AI agent is going to be able to do, right? And eventually the AI agent becomes embodied, and Alexa can do my dishes and feed my kids. We're not there yet, right? We're starting agentic AI, but eventually in physical AI, we get Rosie the robot from the Jetsons, for example. We're not there yet, right? But it's kind of all heading there.
I know. Did you recently see, just going a bit into the robotic space, the Unitree Chinese festival where they had all the dancers with the robot dancers, and it was incredible. It was really incredible what those robots can do.
It's incredible. And there's also advances in robotics related to training on videos of, LeBron, or videos of some of, Michael Jordan, some of the best athletes, right? Imagine training a robot on videos of Messi, who's like, it's to me, it's really interesting to see kind of what's going on in that space. We're going to see more and more definitely in that space.
And just looking at one of the comments here from Lisa, now with the spatial metaverse it's poised for mass adoption, right? What strategies could companies take to adopt this successfully when navigating into the shift? What advice can you give for companies?
I have two pieces of advice for anyone interested in, let's talk about AI and then spatial, right? So anyone in the AI, anyone that's interested in AI, and I'm assuming most of the audience here is already using AI on a day-to-day basis, is don't get distracted by every new tool and every new shiny thing you see. Start to use the tools that benefit you in your business, right? If you are an entertainer, and focus on the tools that make your work better. You don't have to learn to use everything. That's what I was explaining to someone. It's like, I use Perplexity on a daily basis in ChatGPT and Claude. It doesn't mean that everyone has to use that. If I'm in entertainment, I might be using some of the other tools. They might be using Sora on a daily basis. I don't use Sora on a daily basis because it's not necessarily kind of my thing, right? So I think it's so easy with all the news, everything that's hitting us left and right, with all the new tools and all these new things, getting bogged down and like, I need to learn and know how to use every single tool. No, get really good at some of the tools that you're good at. Here's an example. I remember right when the generative AI boom was happening, the idea and the concept of prompt engineers. Well, it is really important for you to know how to prompt and prompt well, right? Is that the end all be all? No, because now you've got, for example, in Anthropic's Claude pretty much optimizes the prompt for you, right? So it's interesting because as soon as you learn a skill, it's like something else comes. Just get really good and really comfortable. Force yourself to get very comfortable with these tools. Use them on a daily basis, and they start to become second nature to you, and you start to find new uses for them. Then challenge yourself. Give yourself a project. Think of something you have never been able to accomplish and try to do it with AI. And that's where I think it gets really interesting, right? I have very minimal coding knowledge. Like it's minimal, right? Some technical skills, but I'm not a developer, but I'm like, okay, why don't I go to Claude, for example? And I'm not just, I use many tools, but I go to Claude and create an app. So I'm able to, without knowing so much code, start to create apps, not an app that lives in an app store per se, but, I'm able to kind of create certain things. So give yourself a challenge and try to see how you might be able to figure that challenge or create something with AI that you would have never dreamed you'd be, something that you never had in your bingo card, but maybe you always wanted to create. Try to use the tools in AI to do it. It might come out as a Frankenstein. It doesn't matter. You tried, you challenged yourself, right? That I think goes to the ethos of that lifelong learning that you're talking about for Singularity U. In this age of AI, where everything is starting to get accelerated and the skills you learn today might not serve you tomorrow, that constant mindset and learning is more important than ever. And community, where you can engage and support each other, is more important than ever. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I do think that there is some knowledge there.
Fantastic, yeah. No, I'm just trying to think about what I can do that I've never been able to do before.
Yeah, think about what is it like?
It's a great idea.
And like I said, try to do it with AI. Try to do it with AI. It might come out as a Frankenstein. You have no idea what's going to come out, but you might be surprised. And then you challenged yourself. You gave yourself a challenge. You accomplished it. And then I would say for integrating spatial computing is start to think about, let me plant a question in everyone's head. If computing expands into the physical world, if you're going to start to have this new hardware that through AI is able to see the world and do things for you, and the physical world becomes a canvas, what does that mean for your business? What does that mean for your services, right? What does that mean for whatever it is that you're doing? And start to think about that, right? I don't think it's a time for you to implement spatial computing per se, because it's not, the hardware's not truly here, but starting to do things like this, building your own virtual experiences and metaverses like the one you have here, partnering with people like, like you guys that do these sorts of things, and starting to get more into that virtual space and understand how that's going to translate into the physical world is a good way to start.
Love it. You got you're basically saying just get involved, just start doing, start playing, start tinkering.
Yeah.
And I'm just also looking at one of the comments here on where do you think this is going in terms of education in the metaverse? How do you foresee the impact in education and how education is going to evolve from the traditional classroom to something more immersive and engaging and fulfilling for students?
Keywords: engaging and fulfilling. If you look at most of the curriculums at most of the schools around the world, we're still stuck in the last century, in the beginning of last century, right? I don't think that has changed as much. And in the age of AI, where your AI agent can get you any answer you need, what is the value of regurgitating a lot of information, right? Before, that's how it used to be tested, right? Now I think it's going to change. I think it's going to be a lot more immersive. We're going to be able to kind of go into these experiences and learn in new ways. We're going to get access to some of the brightest minds. And then, like, I always think about that. I'm like, what if I go to the museum and I could actually, instead of just walking around the museum or having those dreadful audio tours sometimes, and sorry if anyone's worked on those, but what if I'm actually seeing, the statue, like the pyramid, and actually be able to kind of tap into what did it look like when it actually was the biggest part of civilization. So I think we're gonna learn in new ways. I think children, especially Generation Beta, and by the way, for anyone that wants to understand, there's there's Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I have 3 kids that are Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta that started being born January 1st. So Gen Alpha, the younger Gen Alpha and the Gen Beta are truly the AI natives, the ones that are going to be born. AI is ubiquitous for them. This is just something that is in there. They're going to learn in a different way. They're going to need very different curriculums, very different ways of learning. And I think, education is bound to change. For that person that asked the question, I think it was Denzil. I'm actually doing a post on LinkedIn next week on education curriculums and how I think some of the things that kids are going to need to learn are not what they're currently learning in school.
Awesome. Yes, I think the whole idea of it's going to be disrupted. Education is totally going to be disrupted by these new technologies.
It needs to be more experiential. It needs to be more. This is an experience that you and I are in this experience with all these people here. It needs to be more experiential because that's how kids are going to learn. It can't be that regurgitating of information that gets pounded into the head that they all have to learn, especially with everyone having different learning styles. So.
Yeah, and I'm just Aubrey is saying he with his Meta Quest, he prefers to watch there on TV on that rather than physical TV. And just to let you know, Aubrey, all of the Ubu experiences are now headset enabled, so you can come into these spaces with a headset. And guys, we've only got a few more minutes left. We have run a bit over, but if anyone wants to ask Cathy any questions, please come up closer to the stage so we can hear you. Unmute your mic. You just press M on the keyboard, or you can unmute on the top right, or you can write in the chat, whichever you prefer. So if we've got any questions from anybody.
Yeah, there's a really good one in the chat. It says, how do you get this tech to blue collar workers? South Africa's biggest part of the population is unemployed. How do we get AI to them and use AI to improve our employment rate? For example, cleaners. The AI on the mobile phone is extremely powerful. Getting more people to experience AI, talk to AI, train with AI on their mobile phones, I think is going to be really important. I mean, a lot of these people that are probably unemployed do have a smartphone. And if they have a smartphone, they're probably doing TikTok, right? Why don't we actually, instead of spending so much time on TikTok, we're actually doing more work with AI, more collaboration. I think AI, this is where I think what the mentality needs to be, is the future is not so much Ready Player One, where I'm wearing a VR headset and escaping the physical world because it's so horrible. it's going to be more Jarvis from Iron Man, where the AI collaborates with me to do a task. I think that that's where that augmented workforce comes into. With AI, some of these blue collar workers that might not be as skilled are going to be able to do work that they were not trained for, because the AI is going to be able to guide them visually to do these things. So I think that there is this really interesting moment, right? To be able to kind of augment the workers and allow them to do that, especially as I'm not sure how the situation might be in South Africa, but here in the United States, you have a deficit of trade workers. So people that fix, air conditionings, people that, fix your washer and dryer, like trade working, or electricians, right? What if you use AI in devices to allow these people that might have not been able to train for that to actually be electricians, right? And do it safely. So I think that there is going to be a lot of that. And there's also a lot of people retiring who are experts in a trade or experts in engineering, experts in certain things, that are leaving companies. If you're able to use AI and spatial computing to retain that information, that is going to be huge. It's a repository of knowledge that is needed in the world.
Totally. And, we actually are doing some work with in the mining industry to actually train the truck drivers of these massive vehicles with headsets, in the metaverse, rather than being in the field where they're actually sitting next to the driver for a few months, just learning by watching him sitting. You can actually train them at a much quicker time in a safe environment that doesn't affect the general operation. So I think companies it's going to increase their productivity dramatically, and also their training and skills.
100%. And I've been involved in VR, like immersive training, since 2017. Like, I advised UPS when they were starting to train their drivers. UPS is a delivery company like DHL. They were training their drivers using virtual reality as early as 2017, right? Now you have, for example, in sports here, there's a team, the Washington Commanders, that almost went to the Super Bowl. Their quarterback, their star quarterback, was a rookie this year. He beat every record you can imagine for a rookie that could have been, in the Commanders. And you know what the key was? He trains in VR. When he negotiated his contract with the Commanders, he explicitly asked for VR training because he can train at 1.75 the speed of the normal world. So he's already, in his mind, training ahead of the play, right?
Unbelievable. Wow.
Powerful. I mean, just incredibly powerful.
That's incredible. Wow. So Lisa's saying here, we work with teachers in under-resourced areas, and they're often sidelined because of their lack of connectivity, etc. I'm excited to expose them to these amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's
Janice has a good one. Janice in the chat actually went to Perplexity, which is one of my favorite tools, and asked Perplexity for a good question. So the question that Perplexity proposed was, how can South Africa position itself as a leader in AI development and innovation on the African continent while addressing the potential brain drain and fostering local talent? I am so bullish on Africa, and I know you guys probably hear this all the time, but from a demographic perspective, the areas where youth is existing, whether it is the Middle East, or whether it is Africa, or like emerging Asia or parts of Latin America, I am so bullish because those younger generations are virtual natives, and the younger they are, they're going to be AI natives, and they're going to push things forward. I think you need to double down on what you know well and what things are thriving. I think there's a lot of gamers, a lot of really smart gamers in Africa in general, and South Africa as well, as a country and as a region. Allowing some of these gamers to not just be gamers, to actually create and build businesses in virtual spaces is going to be huge, right? I think that there's opportunities to double down. And with AI, we're hypercharged. Who knows? Maybe someone here that heard my message is going to go challenge themselves to build something that they've always wanted to build, and it could become the next unicorn, the next South African unicorn. In that case, I want some equity. But anyway, challenge yourself to build things. We're about to have smaller companies with 10, 20 people that are worth billions, because AI is going to allow us to do that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Also, just looking at South Africa in terms of the investment landscape, we're probably one of the last countries, we're actually at the lowest investment level compared to other countries. I think we've only invested $25 million or some very small number into AI development. So that is one of the big things. We're actually trying to work with government. How do we educate the greater population in South Africa on AI tools and these capabilities so that they can actually use these skills to thrive in the future? And we need investment into infrastructure, education, which I think is becoming, it is sort of becoming a conversation in government. And then I love that we do have a lot of gamers, so there's a lot of potential for gamers to create their next living through these virtual spaces.
This is something that, and I think I said this at the summit, it baffles my mind. I talk to my kids. I've got 3 kids, 13, 14, and 8. And I've talked to my son about what he wants to do. He's a Roblox developer, so he makes money sometimes on Roblox. And he's like, hey, Mom, maybe I want to be a virtual developer for the rest of my life. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Okay. I've talked to my 14-year-old. When she was 11, I asked her, what do you think you want to be? And she said, lunar food scientist. Lunar food scientist. No one in my house works in space. The fact that this Gen Alpha and Gen Beta are not going to limit their career options to just the physical world, right? So we have white collar and blue collar. That's a physical world division. This generation is not going to limit themselves to just the physical world. They're going to think about the virtual spaces like this one. They're going to think about physical world. They're also going to think off planet. Like the career opportunities these kids are going to have, as much as people want to say like AI is going to replace everything, there is going to be job creation. There's going to be things that we don't even know existed. And these kids are going to have many, many careers ahead of them. Multiple careers, right? Because they're going to live a lot more than we do. But I'm really excited because it's not just physical. It's virtual, physical, off planet, and whatever else comes.
Yeah, it's exciting. We actually, it's unknown. Like when we were farmers, we never thought we would be doing this today. I think we've got two quick questions, and we're gonna have to go. I know you've got to go, Cathy. So Jimmy is asking, with DeepSeek, cost to AGR might be lower. When do you see us getting to AGR? Is it an opportunity or a threat?
That if I had the money to answer that question, I think the crux here is in defining AGI. There's AGI, there's super intelligence, there's all these terms. When does it truly become AGI? I don't know. Because everything you hear, at least from the people in some of these companies, it's like, oh, it'll happen in 5 years. Oh, it's around the corner. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. And what is the benchmark for what we truly qualify as AGI, right? Because then you've got different terms. Like some people want to use AGI, some people use super intelligence. So I don't know when this happens. I have a feeling, to be honest, the software development is going really fast, but it's in the large language model space. In my perspective, in order for this to be truly more intelligent than humans, it needs to actually be able to do things in the physical world alongside humans. And I don't think we're that close to that. It might be able to, in a software form on your computer, it will probably it's probably, smarter than you are. But if it's just stuck on the computer, what else is it going to do? Right. So yeah, I don't know when we get there.
Like Ray Kurzweil predicted 2029, which is not very far away. It's 4 years away when we reach.
But then you have like Sam Altman saying it's going to happen next year. I'm putting words in his mouth,
Altman
right?
Next year. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm like, gosh, is that truly what happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it 2029? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next week?
No, totally. Last question we're going to ask is from Janice, and she's saying, it's her own question, not Perplexity. In a highly regulated environment, how can artificial intelligence be leveraged to modernize traditional banking practices and facilitate the global transition to contemporary financial systems on a blockchain or something?
Blockchain. Here, I was last year. I spoke at the Washington D.C. Blockchain Summit, which is a summit that a lot of Congress people and important people in that space go to. And on my panel, I was asked, "Do you think AI will use the traditional banking systems?" And I said, "Why would it? Why would it use the traditional banking systems in the way that it is set up right now? Because no one really wants to go to the bank. Like, is that something people enjoy? Not really, right? I think AI is going to force us to change some of the banking system to make it a better experience. It is also going to change how we make payments and interactions. And I think it's going to push us into that peer-to-peer decentralized approach of finance in some ways. So yeah, I think there's a big role there for AI and blockchain together when it comes to the financial systems in changing. Would AI use the traditional banking system as it is right now? I don't think so. I think it would find a better way to do things.
Yeah, and they're totally complementary. So AI, scales with centralized big data and a centralized source, and blockchain is about decentralization and trust. So together they work, they play very nice.
Yeah.
And the only way to know if something's real in the future is it on chain from a reliable source? Otherwise, the AIs will fake almost anything.
Yeah, and I'll add something to this question. It's interesting when I think of different approaches, and what I'm thinking in my mind, as what the skills you need in the future, right? The World Economic Forum put out this information, and one of the skills that they included there was leadership and social capital. And I think that is really interesting in a space that we're going into where your job might be a shorter term job. You might have multiple jobs. Not that you're working, 40-hour jobs altogether, but I think the way we think of work and we think of finance and we think of making money is AI is going to force us to change that mentality. So I would say double down on your own education, double down on your own mindset as we head forward, regardless of the regulatory systems, because things are evolving incredibly fast.
Thanks so much, Cathy. That was incredible. I know we've run out of time. I hope everyone's enjoyed that. We really value your time, and thank you for coming over through Washington while in Washington. We're looking forward to seeing you in October in South Africa, and we want to quickly just try to do a selfie with everyone if everyone's up for it. So if everyone can come to the middle of the stage, come to like this middle area and come up all close together, and you can share your camera, everybody. So just next to the audio button, you can hit that little camera icon and your camera should pop up. And then I don't know if you've seen, we've got virtual cameraman around the room here filming everything.
Yeah, I saw them. Are they agents?
So we all, they actually are real human beings. And we'll be recording this. This has been recorded, and we'll be sharing it on YouTube and on socials within the next week or so. So thanks everyone for joining. Please give Cathy a big round of applause. You can unmute yourself. You can clap. Thank you for taking part in our first Metaverse meetup. And if anyone hasn't done the quiz already, please make sure to go collect all the eggs. It will unlock a quiz for you, and you can take part in our competition to win a $300 Metaverse ticket to the summit in October. Thank you, Cathy. Cheers, Have a great day.
Bye. Ciao, everyone.